Good morning. Good morning. Jocko, good morning. South Africa. Good morning, Rudy. And good morning, Mr. Waldman. I don't know how to pronounce your first name, sir. Is my volume okay, guys? Kevin, good morning. All right, we'll get started here in just a second. Is my volume okay? Coming in good? This is the 5G. All right. This is 5G Wi-Fi, guys, not Rich Brown's office in rural Tennessee, man. We're in Providence, Rhode Island this morning, and we got some really good Wi-Fi, and you can tell by the quality of the video, and hopefully the volume is good. Joey, good morning. Rudy, volume is great. Fantastic. Well, then let's jump into it. Just like normal, my name is Rich Brown, co-host of America's #1 self-defense podcast, The American Warrior Show, and co-founder of the American Warrior Society, retired Marine, former cop, etc. So thank you for joining me on a Friday morning. I'm here in a cold and rainy Providence, Rhode Island, staying at an Airbnb. As you can tell, this is not my normal office. I'm still having Pete's coffee, though. You can bet on that. Major Dickinson's blend. Gerald, good morning. Tom, good morning. Miko, good morning. Nick, good morning. Joey, good morning. Wow, got a lot of people on. Same thing, guys. The day we hit 50, I'm going to do a randomized drawing for someone that likes, comments, and share, and we'll send you the Gen 1 American Warrior Society tumbler. Just got a few of those left. Man, got a lot of good stuff to cover this morning, so let's go ahead and jump right on in. Like I said, like, comment, and share. I really appreciate that. That's how we reach people. One of the first things I'm going to talk about, as always, I talk to you about an article that's inside the American Warrior Society. Man, this article is really cool. We're so lucky to get this. This is an article written by Dr. Charles Siebert. And Dr. Siebert is coin number 424. He's an American Warrior Society life member. And he is only one of approximately 500 forensic pathologists that are working in the United States. And we are really blessed that he wrote us an article entitled Gunshot Wounds, a Forensic Pathologist's Point of View. He talks about myths, dispels all the myths about what people, maybe some of the things you've heard about what gunshot wounds can do to people. Maybe you saw a movie one time and the gunshot wound threw the guy across the room or did whatever. He actually breaks down the kinetic energy formula and explains to you with math and science how that is absolute bunk. He goes into everything you need to know to make your rounds count when and if you're ever forced to pull the trigger and end another human being's life by exercising your God-given right to self-defense. So if you want to read that article, you want to find out a forensic pathologist's point of view about wound ballistics, this is the article for you. And you can get it for free, absolutely free, AmericanWarriorSociety.com. Click just the article, sir, and you'll be able to check that out. Let's see who's on here this morning. Tell me where you're at. I really like to know. I know we've got New York on here. Mr. Doug Lightfoot is on here. Donald Rutledge is on here. Gerald out in Oregon. Wow. Lots of folks on here this morning. Matthew, coin number 78. Doug, I'm so honored to have you on again, sir. So honored to have you. Absolutely. Okay, guys, we got a podcast you need to check out. This podcast, I had to go deep into the archives to find this one. This is podcast number 19, Predator Tactics and Handgun Disarms with William April of April Risk Consulting. And he does a phenomenal job in this podcast talking about victim selection. And I believe, if I remember correctly, William, slap me around if I'm wrong, but he actually interviews a lot of criminals. He speaks to them and finds out how they do victim selection, and then he passes along that information to you so that you don't have to be that victim. You can actually set yourself up for success. One of the things that I remember when I was working in corrections, I was a pod officer, so I would walk around and talk to inmates all day long for an 8-hour shift. And those of you that have ever worked in corrections, you know that that can be pretty eye-opening. And I would talk to these people about how they do victim selection. And they don't think of crime maybe like you and I do. For them, it's a business transaction. It's how they do their business. They use violence. They use intimidation to get the things that they want. And one guy was telling me a story of how he would target women to do purse snatching. And they were a very professional purse snatching ring. They would steal a van and they would drive around the mall in the Christmas season and have one guy grab it and maybe two dudes jumping out and stealing purses and things of this nature. And he would talk about how they would use those cards quickly within a matter of an hour to run up as much as they could. One of the things I said to this guy, so at the end of the thing, you got this van, right? And he's like, yeah. I said, well, you burn it to the ground, right, to cover your evidence? He's like, no, man, why would I want to catch that? Arson is code. And he tells me the Tennessee code for arson. And he said, that is a sentence enhancing amplifier, whatever. And it's going to get me so many more years if I get caught. I said, so you just run the risk of them finding your stuff? He says, no, absolutely not. See, we purchased a bag full of WD-40. So before we abandon the vehicle, every dude gets a can of WD-40 and we just hose the vehicle down. And I said, what does that do? And he said, and then he explains to me the chemical compounds in WD-40 and says that it will break down. And then he explains to me, he gives me a speech about that the fingerprints are nothing more than water and amino acids and all this other stuff, and how that WD-40 breaks that stuff down. It breaks down fiber and hair follicles and all this stuff, so it destroys the evidence. I say all that to say, not telling you a war story. What I'm telling you is these people are smart. Check out episode number 19 of the American Warrior Show and let William April give you some really great tips about how these people think and how to avoid being a victim. All right, before I go into our gadget, and we got a good one this morning, let's see who is on here. Miko from Oklahoma. Dave, good morning, sir, Pennsylvania. Gerald, number 952 from Oregon. Rudy, Florida Panhandle. Kevin is from San Antonio. Thomas, Oklahoma. Rick, good morning to you, sir. Joey is from the Twin Cities. And Mr. Mike Moon is joining us. Mike attended our firearms instructor development class several years ago, if I remember correctly, Mike. Hope you're doing well out there on the West Coast. Glad to have you this morning. If you're just joining me, I'm usually giving these Friday Coffee with the Rich from my office in East Tennessee. This morning I'm in where am I? Providence, Rhode Island. And we are still having, though, Pete's Coffee, Major Dickinson's blend. But this morning I'm on a 5G network, so we are, the video quality is a heck of a lot better here. Now, yesterday, I flew up here to Providence. I want to show you something. If you remember from last week, I talked about this guy. These cable locks, they come with, when you buy a new Glock handgun or some other handgun purchase, you probably get some sort of lock like this. And they do a decent job of securing your firearm and keeping it safe from maybe little hands. And these locks are pretty good, but they serve many other purposes. And if you remember from a week or so ago, I talked to you about you can fly with this lock. They took my tactical, scary black pen away, but really it was nothing more than something like this. It just happened to be black and made out of metal. It was pretty silly, I thought. But this guy, they're totally fine with you carrying this on an aircraft. It's orange. It doesn't look scary. It's actually a lock. But as I showed you before, it can be a really cool improvised impact weapon. And but there was something else that I didn't explain to you. And after I watched the video, I'm like, Rich, you didn't tell these guys and gals another cool thing this does. It can also be used like the Fast Strike and become a whip with a metal tip on it, and be a pretty vicious little improvised weapon. And again, I whistled through TSA yesterday, just minding my own business. They didn't bat an eye at the lock. And guess what? When I get up here to Providence, if I go to the gym, I go to do jiu-jitsu up here and I need to secure my stuff, it gets to do its job. If I need to secure my firearm while I'm up here, it gets to do its job because we're up here visiting some family and they got little kids. So those locks are pretty doggone cool when it comes to that. Matthew says, good morning, Rich. Okay, so we talked about the article, Gunshot Wounds, a Forensics Pathologist Point of View by Dr. Siebert. We talked about the podcast you need to check out with Mr. William April of April Risk Consulting. Let's talk about Gadget. And I promise you I won't do this often because I'm a book nerd and I would wear you out with books. But there are some books, man, that will permanently stay on my nightstand. And as I've said it before, this is one of them. The Law of Self-Defense by Mr. Attorney Andrew Branca. And I'll tell you right now, before there was this book, there was a great void in the marketplace. And really, I think Messiah Obe and maybe just a handful of other folks were even discussing this kind of stuff, which I find amazing because, as I've told you before, and many of you on here this morning are law enforcement officers, and you've used some degree of force on people. And when you do that, you risk going to jail for the rest of your life. Because if your martial arts and self-defense training aren't put in context of the legal and justifiable use of force, then all you're doing is training yourself to go to prison. And I'm stealing that from, I believe, Rory Miller. He says that quite often. And I don't know if I've said this before, I've been in martial arts since probably 1981. And in that entire time, I don't think I've ever heard any of my senseis or coaches or whatever talk about using the force that they were describing contextually, which I find amazing. So we're going to talk about a couple things in this book and why I'm recommending it to you. Oh, and I'm going to put my old glasses on because these 50-year-old eyes don't see as good as they used to. As you can probably see, there's some dog-eared parts of this book, and there's some highlighter in this book. One of the first things that you need to understand about this book is he gives you the elements of self-defense. So element 1, innocence. Element 2, imminence. Number 3, proportionality. 4, avoidance. And 5, reasonableness. And one of the things I want to point out is under imminence, a lot of times you'll hear the AOJ triad, and people will say this as if the AOJ triad was the end-all be-all of everything you needed to know about self-defense. And it's important, but it is certainly not. It only is part of one element, and that is the element of imminence. AOJ triad, if you're not familiar, is ability, opportunity, and jeopardy. I'm going to talk to you about that real quick because it's very important to understand. And here's another way to think about it. AOJ triad, I've heard a lot of people say that, especially in the military, they'll talk about my window was coming together, bro. This guy was coming over the fence and I got my rifle up and my window's coming together. What he means is, if you've ever heard somebody say that in an interview or something, is the ability. Does this person have the ability to harm me or someone else? And if they have a firearm, they have the ability, right? The opportunity. Do they have the opportunity to use that firearm? Well, if you're within 550 meters of an AR-15, they can hit a point target from that distance. So they definitely have the opportunity. And finally, jeopardy. And the example that he uses in the book to describe this is, think about a bank guard at a bank. You look at the bank guard over there, he's standing there, he has a firearm on him. Does he have the ability to harm you? Absolutely. Does he have the opportunity to harm you? Yeah, he's standing 10 feet away from me. But jeopardy is not there because he's a bank guard. A weapon is holstered, he's doing his job. There's no jeopardy there. Your window ain't coming together, bro, and you're not hurting anybody. So another example might be abilities. Guy's got a knife, and he's saying, I'm going to kill you, and which is jeopardy, right? He's telling you, I'm putting you in jeopardy by my words. However, opportunity is not there because he's on the other side of a chain link fence 20 foot high with razor wire. So he can't hurt anybody with that knife. So you got to think in terms of that. But remember, that's just one small piece of the AOJ triad, which again is only one small piece of eminence. If you think, man, my self-defense is pretty good, then I'm going to challenge you, check out www.selfdefensequiz.com. Take the quiz. If you score 100 on it, maybe you don't need the book, but I doubt you will score that well on it. Here's one of the things that he talks about in this book, and I appreciate the 24 people that are joining me live. And if are any of you, before I go any further, tell me out there who is, if you're using the book, if you have the book, if you like the book, let me know. Jim, good morning, sir. Lydia, good morning from Woodbury. Gerald, books are workouts for the mind. Oh my God, I love that. I'm stealing that phrase. Mr. Sam Day. And so here we go. If you're using the book, let me know if you like the book. And again, we're discussing the law of self-defense.com. I thought this would be a good gadget because, like I've told you many times before I fly to a new state, I will grab this book off my nightstand and check out. So here I'm in Rhode Island this morning, and I'm reading through here when I can and cannot use force because Rich Brown don't want to spend the rest of his life in prison. I'm too pretty for that, as Mike will tell you. Okay, here's one of the things I want to talk about. And let's find the dog-eared page. Self-defense, coming to the defense of strangers is extremely dangerous, as Andrew would tell you. And one of the reasons why, and I'll give you a quick example here, Idaho and South Dakota draw an interesting distinction between self-defense and defense of others. I'm reading right out of the book. They allow you to defend yourself with lethal force against any felony done against you. This includes rape, kidnapping, robbery, all the normal stuff. When it comes to defense of others, however, you can only use that defense if the person is your spouse, parent, child, etc. You can't necessarily use that level of force to save, let's say, someone at a convenience store. That sounds crazy, but that's the law. And in that state, you need to know it, or guess what, folks? You're going to go to jail. Let's see here. Andrew also talks to you in this book right here on page 142, 3 specific sentences about what happened and why when you're talking to the 911 dispatcher after a shooting. Okay, want to know what those are? Gotta get the book here. But I'm going to Providence, and I want to show you this because I've talked about it a few times. This is all the state-specific guidance in the back here, and I had to read it before I came out here because I want to make sure that I'm operating within the color of law. In Tennessee, I have no duty to retreat. Guess what? Rhode Island, you have to retreat before you can use deadly force. You know, that's something important you need to know. Let's see. Let's look at the comments here real quick. Kevin says, I have a copy. Gerald says, I have read it. Doug says, I will be ordering this book. Let's see, Mr. Mike Seeklander's on this morning. He says, incredible book. Joey has a copy, have not read it yet. Tom recommends it. I've got a copy, great book. Gerald says, great paperback as a gift and bought the hard copy for myself. Donald, I guess I'll have to buy the book. Bradley, good morning from North Carolina. Good morning, sir. Rasmus, good morning, sir. Yeah, this book, I tell you what, is probably, to me, it's in some ways the jumping off point for everything we talk about, the lawful use of force in self-defense. If you think about this, self-defense is all defensive, self-defense. And then we've got Steve Tarani that talks about prefense, got another phenomenal book out there, but nothing inside the training ball, which we're going to talk about in just a minute, is offensive in nature. Mike and I are not telling you how to rob banks, guys. It's all about how to defend yourself and your family. But if you do not understand the contextual application of that force, then you stand a good chance of going to prison. There was someone explaining to me about how they went to prison, and he said, I grabbed my girlfriend's arm. We were in the middle of an argument in a parking lot. I grabbed my girlfriend's arm and I pulled her like that. And in the state of Georgia, that was enough to get him 4 years because he had deprived her of her liberties and her ability to escape by pulling her toward him. There was witnesses. She decided to take it to court, and the guy got several years for that one small use of force. You can go to prison for threatening force, like the woman in the Walmart parking lot who pointed her gun at the guy that asked for, I think he asked for a cigarette or directions or what have you. So I don't know what the adjudication of that charge was, but she was charged. And, now you got to fight it out in court and the potential of losing large sums of money that you may or may not have. So get the book, understand the contextual use of force. And some folks will say, well, my instructor, he was a special forces, deadly recon, Marine sniper, blah, blah, blah. Guys, I was in the Marine Corps for 23 years. Almost nothing that we did was in context of a legal use of self-defense. It had more to do with offensive capabilities and offensive use of force. You have to shift some pretty strong intellectual gears to switch that mindset over to one of a defensive mindset only in the legal use of that. Because when I carried a firearm in other foreign countries, I think I've carried a firearm in probably close to 20 different countries now. Every one of those countries we had a SOFA agreement with, standard of forces agreement, something that said, what was going to happen to Rich Brown if he got in trouble in foreign soil as a United States Marine. There's no SOFA agreement protecting me here. I'm on my own, and all I have is what's between my ears, and part of that is influenced by this book here. So can't say enough good things about it. Check out the book. Let's see who else is on here. Andrew Pappy, good morning, sir. Walt Davis, good morning. Coin number 138. Wow, Walt, you have been around. Doug says, Prefense is an outstanding book. Defensive Living by Ed Lovett and Dave Spalding is really good too. I'll have to check that book out. I am not familiar with Defensive Living. Okay, thank you for the recommendation, Doug. Walt says he's got to get back to work, and Donald says spot on. So good. Hopefully enough about that. I want to be respectful of your time here. I've had you on for about 25 minutes already, having coffee with me. I appreciate you joining me. Let's talk about the training vault. I'm not going to give you a specific thing about the training vault this morning. There's just too much to cover. There really is. I want you to explore the training vault, find out what's in there. As I've told you before, Mike and I are working on how to make that curriculum better for you to manage because it is so overwhelming. If you are going to go inside there, I would highly encourage you as a first step, up in the upper left-hand corner, there's an American Warrior Society self-assessment. You click on that. There's a spreadsheet that we built. You can take the tests that are in there. Just like I'm recommending you go to www.selfdefensequiz.com and take the self-defense quiz that Mr. Andrew Branca has written for you and see where you're at. I'm also telling you, if you're inside the training vault, take the self-assessment, guys. You're going to find out what your handgun score is, your rifle score, your medical score, your edge weapons score, your combative score, and then it gives you an overall scorecard with a grade value, A, B, C, D, E, F. And you're going to find out where you're lacking. And guess what? Those places where your skills are lacking, not a problem. Jump into that module and learn from Mike and I and some of our amazing authors and presenters and instructors, and they're going to get you where you need to be. So before I jump off here, any questions for me this morning? Also, I don't know if you can see it, but it's a cold morning up here, but I'm still rocking my American Warrior Society swag. And if you want to get some of that, you can check out our store, AmericanWarriorSociety.com or AmericanWarriorShow.com. Any questions for me, your old buddy Rich Brown, before I jump off here? What kind of coffee are you drinking this morning? I hate to keep you on here, but since we're having coffee together, who's drinking what? This is Pete's Coffee, Major Dickinson's blend. Highly recommend it. How do you make that beard look so good, guys? I tell you, it's not easy. It is definitely not easy. I have not really a beard wax. I think it's a paste. And finding a good barber is the other thing, man. I got a great barber. My jiu-jitsu coach, his wife has a barber shop, and she's the only one that gets to touch this beard. Shout out to Felicia, by the way. Is that Lisa's sweater? Oh, Andrew. I'm gonna give you a heart for that. What's your opinion about red flag laws? We're going to talk about that, okay? Shooting Foreman says espresso. Man, Airbnb, I know I should have carried my espresso maker up here. Don't have one, so I had to use a Keurig. It's just not the same. Let's talk about red flag laws. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan because, like someone pointed out, who's checking those boxes when they're red flagging you? On first brush, it sounds like, wow, what a great idea. Maybe this would have stopped Parkland. Maybe this would have stopped some of the other shooting with the guys that were brought to law enforcement attention. I'm not so worried about the use of red flag laws. I'm worried about the misuse of red flag laws. I've had friends that were in the middle of custody disputes and things of this nature, and some relationships that went bad. Somebody goes and files for a restraining order, and on the checklist is, hey, check this box if this person shouldn't be around firearms. And this judge has the ability with one stroke of a pen to have somebody knocking on your door and taking away all of your stuff. And you know how it looks on TV. If you've got 3 or 4 handguns and a shotgun and a couple of rifles, man, they lay it out on the ground. There's helicopters flying over. It's video filming your arsenal. And you and I know that is not the case. So not a fan of red flag laws as they are currently written. If there's a good one out there, let me know. But no, I'm not a fan. Hopefully that answered your question. Somebody's drinking Folgers. Let's see. Kevin says, just want to say thanks for your time. Man, I appreciate that, Kevin. Thank you so much, sir. Joe's drinking Folgers. Bradley's drinking Black Rifle. I've tried Black Rifle a couple times. I'm a huge fan of those guys with Black Rifle. Huge part of the community that they've built. I really like the branding that they've done. However, I've had a few bags of coffee that wasn't that good. So if somebody has a roast they really like, and Donald recommends, let's see, Black Rifle Coffee, Freedom Roast. Okay, I'll give them another try. Dunkin' Donuts coffee is my favorite. Erasmus says, okay, guys, listen, I've kept enough of your time. We talked about an article that you need to check out. We talked about the podcast. I showed you how to use this gadget as a whip and as a sap, because I forgot to last time. We talked about the podcast with Mr. William April, podcast 19, deep back in the archives, almost 5 years ago, but you need to check that out. We talked about this book that's going to keep you out of prison, because Mike and I and some of our instructors can make you harder to kill, but I can't make you harder to convict, folks. You're going to have to check out Mr. Andrew Branca for that. And then lastly, I said, hey, check out the training vault. Take a first month for free. Get in there and look at that American Warrior Society self-assessment tool and take those quizzes that are in there. Some of them you're going to have to go to the range and shoot, and some of them you're going to have to put the old sneakers on and see where you're at with your run and your pull-ups and stuff. But you need to know. Living in denial is not a place to be. So before I jump off, let's see who's got something for me. Andrew, red flag laws bypass due process and are currently written unconstitutionally. I'm going to give you a big love for that, Andrew. Andrew is my partner in crime on the range every week, and he's absolutely right. So that is all I got. Make sure you like and share. Even though this content is gone, guys, it is still going to live for eternity on Facebook, or as long as Mark Zuckerberg is around. But again, thanks for joining me this morning. Like and share this content so people can watch the repeats, because this morning we got some really good quality video out there. It's not that old grainy stuff that you get when I'm in my office in Tennessee. So thanks for joining me, folks. Enjoy the day. Be safe and take care.